Yeah, I forgot to do that. I was bad. Oh, this one.
Doesn't seem like, in some ways, it doesn't seem like a positive mineral.
Okay.
I don't think, first of all, it's an element.
No, no,
And
true.
second of all, I don't think of elements or minerals as being positive or negative.
Just a warning, we can continue talking about the IRA. We will be joined in just a few minutes by Michelle Persoff from Isaac Bryan's office. So I just wanted to, we may have to interrupt our discussion. Are there more questions about the Inflation Reduction Act?
Well, I think those questions that were brought up about all the systems that are going to be impacted, it seems to me that that's the place where the discussion needs to be focused. And somehow, I don't know how we then begin to have an impact. But when you mitigate one system, then you're just continuing to mitigate a whole series of systems, and many of them ones that we all depend on, and especially the people who live around there. So I'm seeing that as part of what our responsibility is. I'm just not quite sure what the steps are to take that to that discussion to another level, or if there's anybody out there who cares to listen. But I can say to Marcia, we had that problem with Biona wetlands all the time. These are the systems that are going to be impacted, and no one seemed to listen to that part. But at some point, we're really at such a crisis right now that we need to start listening and help other people understand the importance of listening to that progressive systemic impact. So that's
No disagreement.
my concern. Yeah.
Now, the good news is that there has been a lot of money provided to people in the form of tax rebates. There's more coming in the form of tax rebates. And they're pretty much using just the carrot approach in the IRA. There's no stick. There's no regulations that say you have to do it this way.
And so who makes the difference then? Who makes the change? Is that in who we elect, or do we need to, like, what's the road? I really don't know.
I think the answer, to me at least, is yes, who we elect. You're right.
Marcia's hand is up.
Marcia's hand is up.
Yes, since Barbara mentioned me, she's right. And I just, maybe this particular meeting is not going to be the one where we do this, but I do think we should have some kind of a session on the concerns about things that are in that bill, because while I love the things about solar, because unfortunately our governor and his PUC took away the benefits for solar here in this state. So people are going to have to rely on the federal government now for that. And I don't know if they're as good, but I can tell you that my colleagues in Last Chance Alliance and all of these young people I work with who are so concerned about climate, they're very upset about what the solar rebates being taken away. And I hope they can, I'm going to ask a lot of them to come to this meeting so they can hear about the federal subsidies, and hope that those will still do some benefit. But the other things that, what was mentioned already, those aren't the only bad things. There are some horrible provisions for not doing some destructive work in our forest, alleging that the forest raking and all the things that Donald Trump wanted to do all of a sudden are back in there, as if those are going to help the climate. There also are some provisions about the huge amount of hydrogen money that's coming to this state that will also keep us off track from the genuine renewable energies we need. So, you know, it might be good for us to have some kind of a gripe session where we can learn from some of the experts who were opposed to those things and see what some of the solutions might be, because we have to look at that if we're going to be honest about things. And that doesn't mean we don't support the good things that were in there. But you know, I hear what is being said.
Thank you for that, Marcia. I appreciate that. I think part of our job is to be solutionaries.
Sorry, I'm occupied. Somebody else talk.
Does anybody have any thoughts about, I guess it was just announced that there'll be high-speed rail to Las Vegas. Do people like this whole thing? People want to think it's a good idea. It might be more feasible than other things that have been tried.
And it's a
Starting
a private railroad, right? It's not a publicly
Well,
funded.
except I think it has money from this bill we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
Strange place to start from, though. How many people are gonna go to Rancho Cucamonga first to go to Las Vegas?
Well, it's attached to the Metrolink and other transportations. Yeah. So it's actually pretty rational. I mean, I think it's better than where other high-speed rail things got started relative to the clientele that's likely to get on in immediately.
So when they did the environmental study, what did they discover? How many ecosystems are they going to be disrupting there?
Well, the good thing about it is it's it goes down the median of the 15. I don't know how much you value the ecosystems in the median of the 15, but you know, if you do, then it's a negative. But I'm not that enthralled with the median of the 15.
But aren't there going to be things that go out beyond that? I mean, are they?
Well, there are 4 stations, but overall, I haven't prepared myself to address all these issues, but from the map view and so forth, I think that the impacts are relatively small because you have 4 stations total, one in LA, one in Las Vegas, and one in Cucamonga, and 2 in the
One's in Barstow.
no, it's not in Barstow, but they're I forget they're 2 towns near in the Antelope Valley there. So I think the impacts are actually on that level minimal, and but I do think that there are tremendous impacts of, say, solar in the Mojave and large scale solar as opposed to residential solar. So there's lots of interesting trade-offs that are being made, many of them not environmentally wonderful. So, but I don't see the obvious negatives there. If you right off the bat, maybe with time we can think of something more negative. Does anybody have any other thoughts about high-speed rail or that project?
That one makes more sense than the Merced to Bakersfield one.
Well, it's a place to start because it is hooked up actually to the LA metro, 2 metropolitan areas that people
Like
see.
I said, it makes sense.
Yeah,
People
I
going from LA to Vegas makes sense.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
me.
no,
How many people are gonna take.
no,
high-speed
I'm-
Bakersfield to Merced?
I'm very pleased that we found something that you like. So, or
Rancho Cucamonga was the first strange place to stop, but I didn't know that you could catch it from, that it's gonna tie in with Metro Mail.
yeah. So I think I just happened to look at this the other day. I'm not extremely well versed, but I don't see anything obviously negative.
Oh, I didn't see anything particularly negative. I just thought,
No, I'm
strange place to
It could-
start.
well,
Why
I-
not come to the Union Station and go to.
well,
Vegas?
I mean, it effectively will, because
Yeah.
it's attached to the Metrolink, but obviously, more, that's the limit, I think. I think you're identifying the major problem with high-speed rail is you need to connect the cities first. Have transportation in cities so you can get to the high-speed rail. I think that point that you're making is,
So Michelle Persoff has joined us from Isaac Bryan's office. Michelle,
Hello.
we've just been talking about the IRA. And
Okay.
the meeting that the club is going to be having next month about the IRA. And there's information about it on the agenda, if you want to look at it for yourself.
Okay.
But now that you're here and ready, why don't you introduce yourself?
Great. Well, hello everyone. My name is Michelle Persoff. I am zooming in from my car. Our office right now is in the midst of wrapping about 3,000 presents for an event on Sunday. So it was hard for me to get away. But I have been working for Assemblymember Isaac Bryan for about 2.5 years. I joined his office just as a field representative, and I cover the northern part of the district. So before redistricting, I would have overseen our West LA portion, and then I go down to Culver City and inland to LACMA, basically. So about 5 months after I started in the office, I started doing legislative work. I was already covering environment from the district side, but then I started staffing bills, and I worked on, I cover natural resources, water, parks and wildlife, emergency management, and a couple others, all the environment related committees I oversee. And the first year I staffed his Justice 40 bill, which was related to the funds coming down from the federal government. And it would have used the Justice 40 initiative that was from the Biden administration to codify it into state law so that 40% of the funds would be designated for disadvantaged communities. And that bill got held, I believe, in Senate appropriations. And then the following year, so last year, I staffed his street. So the first bill, for what it's worth, the lead sponsors were the APEN and the Green New Deal Coalition. So we had a really great group behind it, and that was really helpful. And then last year we had the street furniture data bill, which came from the sponsors. The lead sponsors for that were Move LA. And that is in relation to the lack of transparency and just lack of visibility of bus shelters in an equitable fashion. So this would have required local jurisdictions to report their street furniture from bus shelters to benches to trash receptacles to Caltrans. And then Caltrans would use that data and then send it to the system that trip planning apps such as Google Maps will use for users to be able to see if there is, let's say, a bus shelter at the stop that they are going to, or if they could, let's say, go down the street to the other end of the stop and get a bus shelter there, which would not only allow a user, a commuter, to ride more comfortably, more safely, especially on hot summer days or rainy days, but it would show where the shelters specifically are not, and heighten that sort of equity concern. And that's something that has been is now being addressed on a local level. last year there was a UCLA study where I think they just drove around the county to see where there were bus shelters specifically, and that kind of sprouted some more interest. So in our district, we have the Inglewood oil field. We also have the West Pico drill site. We have the Murphy drill site, which we didn't have before redistricting. So after last November, the Murphy, or what was the Murphy drill site, came into our district. And then we have the Rancho Park and Hillcrest drill sites. Before redistricting, we had both of those. After redistricting, we only have the Hillcrest ones. So on the golf course, we do not have those, but we have the ones that are, I guess, essentially at the country club or the apartments. I don't remember exactly. And a lot of the work that I have done just kind of on the ground floor has been, thankfully, when constituents bring to my attention questionable approvals for reworks, particularly, that's when I have kind of sent a friendly message to CalGEM and asked them to look into it to make sure that the city zoning administrator had in fact done the approvals that the operator said they had done. And that has actually led to notices of intent being returned to the operator because they hadn't in fact done what they needed to do. So that's a small victory. And then last year in the legislative cycle, I should also mention my boss was sort of the lead assembly member on SB 1137, which was the oil and gas setbacks bill. So that would have created a buffer zone, basically where children play, where people sleep, and 3,200 feet would be the perimeter where you could not have drilling. And that passed. That was signed by the governor. And then $25 million was spent by the oil industry to gather signatures and lie to people to get their signatures, to get it on the ballot for a referendum measure, which really just bought them time because it freezes the law. So for the next 2 years, and now it's about 1 more year, they can still keep drilling as much as they want in neighborhoods. And as a result of that bill, Assemblymember Bryan, who at the time was chair of the elections committee, he introduced AB 421, which is on referendum measures to clarify the question. So we are used to having very confusing questions like, do you want to uphold the bill that says you cannot do X? And it gets confusing, and then people will bank on that when they put it on the ballot again and hope that enough people are confused that they will have the measure overturned. So what AB 421 did is really just make it a simple yes or no question. Do you want to uphold the law or do you not? And there was a long process for that, which now has also turned into on the pamphlet that you receive about all the things that will be on your ballot, the informational ballot. You will get I think the the funders of the bill. And so that brings us to him now as Chair of Natural Resources. In everything that he and our office seeks to do, there's always going to be a lens of equity, environmental justice, and because of where we are situated, because we have these oil wells in our district, I would say that that is one of the leading points of interest for him. And because when you have, as Chair of Natural Resources, he is also, we expect, going to be seeing a lot of CEQA related legislation. So we're sort of bracing for that and everything that comes with it, as well as related to CEQA legislation, housing bills. So that's kind of what we're looking at now, and we're developing the legislative package that he'll be introducing next month. I've taken a lot of meetings, and there was one other point of interest that I thought of, and it disappeared momentarily, but it'll come back. But yeah, I've been talking for a long time.
So, if you remember what you wanted to say it. But in the meantime, I'm sure there's lots of questions, and feel free to ask Michelle any questions about what's happening in Isaac's shop. Of course, we want to focus on the environment and clean energy kinds of things that he's working on. And if you don't hear something that you want him to work on that he's not working on, then say something. Yes, Susan.
What? On this SB 1137 with the 3,200 feet from where children play, these are existing wells, so would they have to stop drilling, or does this only apply to new drilling?
Existing and new drills.
So they would have to stop
Yeah,
drilling.
I believe so. It's been a year.
Yeah, but that's kind of
That
like,
was, I think that was the intent for sure. I don't know if that
It was-
is
it-
the result.
It was definitely no new drilling and no reworks.
Yeah.
but those that are still. Only because obviously you're going to be, if you're stopping existing wells, you're taking money and at this point still fuel out of the economy. I'm not sure that that's such a positive, because those wells have already been there. I get
Dave, do you
not,
know of him?
I don't know the answer to the specific question as to reworking or new, or I'm not that familiar.
I get
What did
not,
they have to stop? The question that was being asked is, the existing wells that have already been drilled are pumping oil,
Yes.
and they're less than 3,200 feet
because some of them are.
from homes.
I'm almost sure that, my guess is that you'll have a very hard time getting those to stop, and I don't know exactly what is encompassed by the term rework. And so, and that probably, that may be, certain downwell things to do, I don't know, but,
Okay.
so, the particulars are probably important here, but I don't know them.
It's like moving into.
It was,
People cracking and acidizing, I guess is another term.
it was for no new wells.
That makes sense.
I
to
just
me.
looked it up.
Oh,
Well, in local jurisdictions for Culver City, for LA City, and for LA County, they're also doing phase outs and doing amortization studies so that they are not held liable for takings. But yeah, that's an argument that is definitely something that has to be addressed. Otherwise, I mean, there already have been lawsuits on local jurisdiction levels, but the argument is they can say they've recouped their investment, and therefore the city does not owe them anything.
Okay,
So Wendy and Marcia. Yes.
Marcia, you had a question?
Or Wendy did.
I see your hand is up and I see Wendy's hand is up. You're
Hi,
muted.
Michelle, great to
There
see
you are.
Hi,
you.
Marcia.
Sorry, my lighting is has me all wiped out here, but wanted to say first of all, congratulations to the assembly member. Please let him know how excited we are that he's going to be chairing the Natural Resources Committee for the Assembly. I feel like we're going to be in good hands with him there. I have to tell you, when we first took him on, you remember this, but I want everybody else to know, when he first took a tour of the Ballona wetlands, I was mentioning how people from his district, which is not the Ballona wetlands, but it's close. But I was mentioning how people from his district are impacted. And he said, I don't really want to hear that. And I've never heard an elected official say that. He said, of course my district matters, but I would care anyway. And I thought that was just so wonderful that that an elected official didn't just say, well, it's not my district, because so often we hear that. So I do feel he's going to be great in that position. I want to mention, related to the 3,200-foot setback, since that was brought up, in case people don't know, the oil companies are trying to reverse that on the November ballot, which is horrible. And so the fossil fuel industry is putting up a lot of money to try and get that reversed. And even our governor, who has been too close to fossil fuels, in my mind, on a lot of issues, he's for that 3,200-foot setback. So I think we all have to come together and do what we can to get that supported, because, I mean, are the $1 million bonuses for Chevron and Arco, et cetera, what we really want to put over human life? I mean, I don't think so. We have a lot of people who've had huge health problems because of the wells being right in their own backyards. And then finally, I just want to see if, just mention to you that I'm going to contact you, because I think, given that we had a victory in our lawsuit at the Ballona wetlands, there's a lot of confusion about what it means. And the California Department of Fish and Wildlife is saying things that are totally contrary to what the judge says. So we want to come in and give you a briefing, and the assembly member a briefing, so he understands exactly what the judge said and where things are going before they get off the rails again.
I would
Got it.
love for you to come in
Thank
and tell us where we are on that. Because I'm mixed up.
Yeah, maybe Mark, do you want to think about us doing that at another meeting?
We just lost contact. I don't know what happened, so.
maybe if I moved the mouse, it would be awake. I don't know why
Let me put on some audio here.
I don't know why it went to sleep.
Marcia, I'm going to say absolutely at a future meeting. Mark and
Okay.
I will talk about it, and let's definitely do
And
that.
I'm
And
gonna turn on my speakers.
Especially because of the gas issues getting more concerning with hydrogen, et cetera.
yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good.
I thought it was going to sleep. I saw that in the message.
Michelle, we're sorry.
It said,
No, you're fine.
it said going in 2 minutes or something. I don't know what that meant.
I wonder if it cut us off.
We are still here.
Can you not hear us, Mark?
Michelle, are you on?
I can hear you,
Zoom?
but I'm gonna make it.
Mark,
I'm
you have
gonna-
echo. You're on two mics or something.
I'm aware.
Okay.
What did you say to me?
Oh, I was just wondering, you're not there in person, right? You're on the Zoom.
I'm on the Zoom, yeah.
Okay. So I was just thinking maybe we should continue, but I just want to make sure with Mark. Mark, can we continue?
Yes, we can continue.
Okay, so
No.
Michelle, this is Wendy Rosen, and I was also on that walk at Bayona. And right after that, I'm also on the board of the California Environmental Voters. And the assembly member was the guest speaker at our next meeting. And he was like, oh my gosh, I just saw you. And Sierra Club was there, and California Environmental Voters was there. And this, he's so great. And we're also really excited because he's been an amazing environmental champion on all of the issues that California Environmental Voters and the environmental community has really been, trying really hard to get through. We shouldn't be working this hard, right, during a climate crisis to get the environmental priorities through, but we have had to. And one of the things that I just wanted to sort of bring up was that when we have a bill like the setback bill that is so important, it was like such a monumental thing that it passed finally. And then we have these housing bills that Scott Wiener brings out, and he doesn't exempt for setback, right? Had he started to do exemptions in his housing bills for setback, we wouldn't be worried what the gas company was going to do, because all of our housing bills would start to have these setback, right, exemptions in them. And I think we need to really start, to me, legislators are really sometimes thinking in a vacuum, and it really frustrates me that it's like housing, 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 housing. And then we're not thinking about, well, you're putting housing in you're streamlining CEQA, which means bypassing environmental review, and we're taking out important trees that are actually then warming the climate faster and creating fires and then creating more displacement. And right, there's no sort of like broad view. And so I'm also really happy to know that the assembly member will be on the Natural Resources Committee, because I'd really like to see some thought go out into some of these other bills that we can bring in some equity and some conversations about, right, making sure we cover the environment in all the bills that are coming forward, because it's not separate. Because I just wanted to put that out. Like, we'd love to also, Mark and I, have a meeting with you, because we've been talking about how we can influence legislation in a way that really moves the environmental needle forward. And I don't know if you want to talk about like your package of bills for next year, or sort of your ideas on that.
So
Just one moment. I'm going to ask that you speak loudly. We're on some little, really tiny speakers here in the room now. So
okay.
make sure you can be heard.
Okay. How is this level?
That's fine.
Okay. First, I want to first say, it is really helpful, like how I mentioned our first year with the Justice 40 Act and the Green New Deal Coalition. It's really helpful when we have strong support, so that when a bill is going to be heard in committee, we have all of those call-ins in support. The assembly member really likes to have a long list, so that everybody knows that he has the reputation, that he has support up and down the state. And to that note, for bills, especially bills that are not just district related, if they affect the whole state, then we want people calling in and sending in letters of support from across the state. So that legwork of grassroots organizing comes from the clubs and the activist organizations. And it really does help, and it matters. And especially if it's coming from one of the big ones like EnviroVoters or the Sierra Club, the other legislators see that, and it's important to them, at least some of them, and I would say most of them. It's important, and it resonates. So that is the biggest way to support the work. And then, obviously, if you feel opposite of a bill and you want your voice to be heard, send in a letter of opposition, write emails. That stuff does get noticed because especially my boss cares about what the community feels on the subjects. So if there's something that we are missing, then please reach out so that we know what the community is saying. And then for the package for next year, one thing that I will mention is that on the point of oil wells, we are looking at a few different ideas. One thing that we have been aware of is the Monterey decision, and that has left a few local jurisdictions concerned. So whether or not we want to do something allowing local jurisdictions to be more aggressive in their winding down of oil well operations. That's the sort of language that we're looking at because the Monterey decision gave the opinion, some people believe that the resulting opinion was that preemption does not allow local jurisdictions to be more intense with their winding down of oil well operations. And then I will say everything else is really just like on a list of things that we're discussing. I think that we are going to be seeing probably some more hydrogen related things, like I said, CEQA related things. And the other day I went on a tour hosted by Senator Bradford down at the port of LA to learn about carbon capture, marine carbon capture. Two different companies are working at the port down there. So they were introducing us to it, and then there was a discussion as to the challenges of getting to scale and how they can get results to show their success, because that is important. No matter how much we want to believe in something, especially when you are in a $68 billion deficit, you really do need the data to support every decision that you make to spend money. So, and nobody wants to feel like their money is being wasted. And that's important to our constituents, and we take that seriously. So, we'll see. But yeah, that's kind of the point we are at right now.
Can you forward to us the company's names that are, or contact information for that marine carbon capture?
Yes. The first one is called Captura. I can email this to you.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I can't remember the name of the other one.
And
But yeah.
I just want to follow up with you on one more thing, and that is, you did mention CEQA, and, we have had a devastating year for CEQA. And these, exemptions really do hurt in a lot of the times the social justice, and it's really inequitable because that a lot of the sort of elite white communities, which some of us are part of, we have resources to sue, and that always does get some movement usually, to bring people to the table to have conversations. And so it really is inequitable to be exempting out so much of the environmental laws that really protect the environment, and allow mitigations to occur. And so I'm hoping that, that the assembly members will really, stand up for not allowing too many more secret reforms, in the name of, housing, or in the name of jobs, or in the name of, right? Because we're in a climate crisis, and the environment should be really integral in everything that's happening. And we're losing sort of ground, non-natural resource protection, and, endangered species are disappearing. And, I'd just like to hear your sort of perspective from your office of where you guys come out on that.
So up until now, his role has been, he hasn't had to make that decision as the chair of natural resources. So it is shifting the perspective. And I think that the answer is kind of yet to be seen. But like I said, if the entire environmental community is going to come out in arms against something, he will take that to heart. And I think that from there, we see what happens. Because there is a housing crisis, and if we can make a bill that is thoughtful, that does make sure that we are protecting our communities, but makes housing go faster, then that would be the perfect situation. We need to figure out how to do that. So,
We have some ideas, so maybe we could talk about that.
okay. I was just told that I need to go back inside because they're wrapping up. So I have a couple minutes left.
Well, Michelle, thank you for coming. I'm sorry we had some technical difficulties in the middle, but.
Can you hear Mark? He's saying, thank you very much for coming. We're sorry we had technical difficulties. We really appreciate you being here. We hope you'll come back and join us again next year. We're going to continue these updates with different offices, and we really appreciate you being here and your assembly member. And please know that we'll be reaching out to you to follow up with some ideas. And please keep in touch with us because, like you said, if you guys need groundswell of support for bills, let us know. We have huge networks. We can turn people out.
Perfect. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm sorry I was a couple minutes delayed from my own technical difficulties.
Well, happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks again, Michelle.
Thank you.
We're gonna move on. I just wanted to say, Bruce is new here. Basically, everybody who is at this meeting is now a member of the committee. And I'll just put you on the mailing list. You'll be getting mails from the WLADC Environment and Clean Energy Committee at googlegroups.com. Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Finally, in Google Groups again, I've been off.
Yeah.
Google Groups, so I have less people to talk to.
Mark, I'm sorry. It's really difficult to hear you, and I'm going to hop off. But if there was anything that we were supposed to do for our committee, can we just do it by email?
I'm sorry, say that again, Wendy.
It's very difficult to hear you, so I'm going to hop off. But I was saying if there was
Yes,
anything
I
we were
heard.
supposed to do with our committee, can we just do it by email and circulate stuff around?
Yeah, we're gonna actually consider the some suggestions for our legislators next. So you might want to stick around for that.
I can stay around for 5 more minutes.
Okay, well, let me share the screen.
By the way, the PUC approved Diablo Canyon extension for 5 more years after 2025 today. In a 3-0 vote.
Okay, so in theory, oh, I gotta hit that. Okay, so I've been asking people to submit suggestions that we want to discuss with our state legislators. And I've got a list here. Basically, what I want to do with this list is I want to run through it pretty quickly. And I want you guys to be prepared to vote on whether you agree that these are items that ought to be discussed with our state legislators. So the first item is restoring solar installation incentives. Susan, do you want to, we're back in the meeting. Do you want to, what do you guys think about restoring solar installation incentives? Do you have any questions about that item that we will be talking with our legislators?
I think it's a good idea.
Pardon?
It's a good idea.
It's a good idea. Yeah, we agree.
Not just installation, but various kinds of solar. Well,
But I have a question about that. Was that like, those incentives, were they all over? Or because I keep seeing these emails that it's in your zip code?
Yeah, but that's just-
Well, I will talk to you about that. Basically, if you are a customer of Southern California Electric, if you are a customer of San Diego Electric, if you are a customer of Pacific Gas and Electric, then the CPUC incentives or disincentives affect you. If you are not one of their customers, if you are, for example, a customer of LADWP, the CPUC has no effect on LADWP. They make their own decisions, but they often follow the CPUC.
I only was curious because my sister had solar installed and hers, she didn't fall in the area where she got an incentive for doing it.
Yeah.
And she lives in Whittier, so I don't know who she has her electricity through.
I don't know what Whittier is, but
it's all ratepayers in the state, even if you're DWP, even if you have
does not affect DWP.
community choice aggregation, you pay for Diablo Canyon because PG&E is
Okay,
priority.
let's move on. That was the first one. We want the CPUC to restore solar incentives or do something.
You know, I think that's important for the residential solar to be, and, you know, medium scale solar on structures to be advocated for, because we now have tremendous amounts of, you know, open area now encumbered by, which is, you know, has all this other incident
Right,
impacts. And
Right.
so,
yeah, they've cut out community solar almost altogether. So now the next thing is another CPUC item. And this is the tax that the CPUC wants. Okay, now how do I get that? Come back. There we go. So in a trailer bill in 2022, the legislature got a bill that said we authorizing the CPUC to I guess the right word is create a graduated income tax from whatever the CPUC at one level goes to another level. I mean, the first one that I saw was everybody over who made 150K or more would have to pay an $85 a month tax on their electric bills.
Regardless of how much electricity you use.
That's correct. Had nothing to do, it's outside of electricity. Now, to compensate in theory, their rates would go down. So the rate per kilowatt hour would decrease. And a lot of these things that are not kilowatt hour dependent would be paid for by the tax. The most recent proposal is $30 a month for 150,000 or more. A lot less. It is also 3 times high. By the way, a lot of states have this kind of structure, but typically they're charging $10 a month at the high end, not $30.
So your electricity bill isn't on how much you use, but how much you make.
Exactly.
So if you make
No, it would be a combination.
Yeah,
Your electricity
combination.
bill would be a combination of how much income you make plus how much you used.
But it looks like a majority of it is how much you make.
So if a person made $150,000 and they, under the first one at the $85 and say they use $30 a month of electricity, their bill would be $115.
Correct.
For maybe the first year, it may go up.
Yeah,
Subsequent
right.
years.
Okay, so this is,
Okay, I'm just trying to figure that out.
okay,
But if the person's making less than that, it's still, their electricity would be only 100. So it's just a matter of how much you like people who make over $150,000 a year.
Otherwise, they couldn't keep people in the state because the utility bills are almost like rent these.
That's
days.
correct. so
Except
this
for-
is obviously pretty controversial.
And it
With
just-
it is an environmental justice kind of a thing. Because there's a belief, and you can actually logically show it, that people at the low end of the spectrum who pay the same rate as people at the high end income end of the spectrum, maybe that should be graduated and lower the price for people who don't have a lot of money.
Weren't they talking about that, doing that also with the water for a while? Because
We're not talking about water, we're talking about electricity.
weren't they at one time talking about doing it with water as well?
I'm talking about electricity.
Okay.
I don't know. So that is the second item that is on here. And basically, we're not recommending an alternative. We're saying find an alternative. This isn't right. You guys have gone way too far. Wendy, you want to describe the next one? It was yours. Are you still with us?
You look at
I think we might have lost Wendy. Okay,
Mark,
so this has to do with,
Mark, Wendy wrote something in the chat. It doesn't mean we shouldn't go over the rest of these, but she said maybe we should send this out to everyone and have people vote online.
we have, oh, well, yeah, we could vote online. Do you guys want to do that?
yes.
I'm okay with voting online.
People vote.
Okay, Uh,
Can
in
we
it-
still go over what they are?
you want to continue to go over the list?
Formal
Yes.
position on state legislative bills.
Yes.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Sure you don't want any Christmas ornaments?
I think I'm good, Christmas ornament. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Oh, it's nice paper.
so
Nice paper.
Wendy has pointed out that AB 1633 has a problem with it. She's described the problem basically saying that it will unleash a flood of litigation against public agencies. The bill could cause lead agencies to decline to prepare necessary environmental documents. The bill could allow developers to avoid public scrutiny of their projects. and the bill will discourage meritorious lawsuits under CEQA. You can read in the links on the far right more information. The letter I thought was pretty good, pretty explanatory. And AB 1633, if you click on that link, you can read the bill. Kim, I don't know if you're with us. Okay, Kim has written that the lack of vegetation.
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Kim,
I'm
do you
still
want to
here.
describe your problem opportunity that you've uncovered?
Sure. So I read this article in the New York Times about the lack of vegetation in less affluent areas, and there is a decrease in the amount of wild birds and other animals in those areas. So the more affluent areas have a more diverse ecosystem than in the more less affluent areas. And in LA, there are sections. A lot of LA lacks trees and vegetation in a lot of places, and I think it would be a positive. It would cool things down and make the environment much more hospitable to both people and animals. And so I think it would be a positive. So that's what I thought would be a good thing to bring up, especially with the big push to build and the thought process about, what's the environment around all this building going to be alike? And that's my.
You're looking for funding and education to enhance vegetation in less affluent areas.
Yes.
So,
and in a way, how to do it economically. There may be barriers there and how to do this for neighbors, and maybe neighborhoods can do it, be part of that process. So, I'm not sure. I just think it's something to think about and to investigate.
I have a question about the urban foresters or forestry in Los Angeles. Does anybody know how people get trees planted in their parkway?
yeah, I don't know how you get trees planted, but I know who does it. And that's the Department of Forestry. There is a Los Angeles City Department of Forestry. And I would assume you call them and
Now, who
But
is,
that's- That's the city though.
that's
What
in the
about
city of
each-
LA.
Each city is,
Each, ci-
like Culver City has its own
right.
land of, what is it, land force management plan.
but who's the head of the Department of Forestry in LA City? Does anyone know? I've been trying to reach somebody there for a long time and they never call back.
Who's your representative, your city council person?
Katie Yaroslavsky.
So could it hook up with Katie's office?
Good idea.
And on her vegetation, they're supposed to, that's the whole stadium property, where the museums are and the sports stadium are, they're supposed to be moving parking structures underground and creating green space above ground with trees and all kinds of stuff. Theoretically, by 2026.
Theoretically.
2028 at the latest.
For the Olympics.
2026 for the World Cup and 2028 for the Olympics. So somewhere in that time frame, all this is supposed to happen.
Okay. The next item is actually a list of items. So the way the legislature works, you submit a legislator senator or an assembly person submits a bill for consideration, it goes through lots of contortions. Those are actually called committees that consider various aspects of the bill. If those bills, in theory, about the middle of the legislative year, so July, all the bills that pass one house go to the other house for consideration. They have to be passed out of the other house by September. And then the governor considers all of those bills. I think this last year he had over 2,000 of them to consider. And he signs some of them and he doesn't sign others. Some bills, though, follow a different track or can be put on another track if they're lacking support. And that's called a 2-year bill. So it's basically a bill that's introduced in the first year of a legislative session and is put on the 2-year track that has to be completed in the second year of legislation. So all of these bills that we're looking at here are bills that were held over from the first session. So they didn't pass out of any house, their houses by September. They were not considered by the governor. Instead, they're going to be considered in the new year. There's a description of each one of these bills. I think there's 5 of them here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I think that's right. And there are, of course, more than that, but these are the ones that deal with the environment and clean energy.
Can you go back to that list of bills?
If I can figure out how to just get a
You
little
can
bit.
change the percentage of viewing it. and
Okay,
try to
and
get
I just needed to get the last number.
that.
SB 306,
308, 308.
SB 70, 308, SB 709, AB 9.
Yeah, I had the others.
Okay.
I just needed the last one.
You know, as an editorial comment, I didn't see anything grossly wrong with any of them. They seemed reasonable bills. There's a couple of them that actually have to pass out of, let's see, their home house. I think Al Marisucci's is one. It has to pass out of there by January 31st, or it can't be considered. And then the one right after it. And for some reason, this isn't doing what I want it to do.
Change the.
Yeah,
Well, now you've gone to.
that's good.
You went away, Jojo. You're done. You're through. He erased you. Oh,
All right.
We did. Just-
Okay, next we had. Come on.
Get up in the amendment.
Okay. Jojo Chen.
Go ahead. No, you talk.
I
know.
know. You can tell us. What do you want us? California monopoly electric gas and electric and gas utilities are using the money that they collect from customers monthly from their bills to fund political machines that push legislation.
Curry favor.
Basically,
Curry.
they're using money that is paid by ratepayers ostensibly to pay their electric bill that they are using for political purposes. This is not legal. And Jojo would like this, like somebody to put their foot down.
Well, and I wasn't sure if there's already a state law, but I wanted to find out more, because I did see in that additional information that Sonoma Independent, that they did, one of the utility companies did pay a fine for doing this. So I'm not quite sure.
Are these utility companies publicly held or privately held?
They're an IOU, investor-owned utility, so they have,
Ironically, they're private utilities, but they call it they're the public, they regulate for the Public Utilities Commission, which.
That's not
Yes,
what
they come under the CPUC.
but they.
So
they-
for
they're-
example, SoCal Electric. Not SoCal Electric,
Yeah, it is.
SoCal Gas.
Electric and Pacific Gas and Electric.
SoCal Gas is a public utility.
But does it have stockholders?
They have stockholders.
So they're traded on the stock exchange.
They are
Yes.
traded by that's correct.
They're a
That's
private
okay.
utility.
And they make a profit. They
They
have.
make a profit, so.
They're not a
technically-
public utility. They are a publicly regulated utility.
Yeah, I left out an important word, didn't I? Publicly
So,
regulated.
in theory, they're the same as any other corporation. They can spend their profits however they want.
Except that they can't, because they've been granted a monopoly in their territory. And in return for being granted a monopoly in their territory without competition, they have to abide by state regulations that are passed by the CPUC.
So
And
that
every
would-
state, for that matter, it's not just
So
California.
that's would be, we'd have to see if there is such a regulation in there, because I would think because that their stockholders would be the ones that would have to stop them doing the political. But
The ratepayers, which is us, and we can go lobby the PUC, but the PUC has been heavily in the pocket of SoCal Gas and all the utilities for that matter. We need a new governor with new PUC people.
Basically, that's the correct answer, except we can impact that through legislation. So if we can get a bill passed through the legislature, the two houses, and signed by the governor, then we can make changes. We can say, hey, you can't allow this to happen anymore. You've got to crack down.
it just seems to me like if it's a publicly held company where you have stockholders and investors, that the state has little control other than saying, because you've got a monopoly, you have to abide by certain rules,
That's
or your monopoly is lifted.
No, you can't, I don't know what actually,
They're already.
if they lifted the monopoly so that they permitted other competitors in the same area, I suppose that would be true.
The Southern California and LADWP are both in LA County.
LADWP is publicly held by the city
by
of
the
Los
city,
Angeles.
But it doesn't have stockholders.
No
amongst
stockholders.
Southern California, it is a publicly held company with stockholders who get dividends and make an investment.
That's
So
correct.
the LADWP would have a different set of regulations determined by the city than Southern California Edison, but they both compete somewhat in the same, they both compete in LA County. Now, I don't know how.
Actually, they do not.
Whether it's the city of LA or.
Correct. If you're in the city limits of Los Angeles, you've
You
got
have
LADWP.
But you could.
If you're in Culver City, you
You
don't.
have Southern California Edison.
And I bet even though DWP people might not realize it, but they're in a lot better shape financially than the.
So what I'm saying
other
is theoretically, you could say, if you don't abide by certain rules, we'll lift the monopoly.
Okay, folks if you're on Zoom, I can't see hands getting raised.
Well,
So somebody else can, so if you want to say something, just break in.
well, and other states are doing this. They've got legislation to fight for this. That you can't use ratepayers' money to advocate or use it for.
Yeah, I don't
political-
think, To me, what I see as the problem is you're telling every company they can't use the income they get from their customers to fund political operations.
But this is a monopolistic,
That's what,
that's the.
I'm not
nuance.
sure which would be better to take away the monopoly, so they have to be competitive, which would force them into
I don't
maybe
think
different.
In,
that's different. No, they can't.
let's move on.
But yeah, you're hitting a big, a big threshold to get non-monopolistic companies. Because look what San Diego's trying to do. They're trying to go publicly owned, and the utility companies went in and fought that tooth and nail. So
Okay, SB 410. SB 410 is a bill that passed, that is signed into law, and we hope will solve some of the problems that have caused a backlog of power companies, let's say it a different way, of power generators who are producing power, want to generate power and ship it to Los Angeles. In order to do that, they need a connection to the grid. And those connections to the grid are taking years now in paperwork. And then they have to borrow money to actually create to put in a new power line. So it takes way too long for power generation that starts at a new generating station to get online and actually going to customers. The SB 410 supposedly has, and I read it, and I don't understand how it's going to work, but I read it. Supposedly it's going to speed this up. It's going to speed up the whole process so that the line to get hooked up to the grid won't be so long.
Is the delay partly because they're trying to move all the power lines underground?
It has nothing to do with
No,
power
it's
lines.
not that-
Yeah, it's hooking in the green energy generators, the
It's-
new solar plants or the new, solar places or the new, just.
But don't
any
they go
green-
through the power lines that are already
Yes.
existing?
We're talking about the high voltage power lines on the big towers.
That's what I'm saying. And isn't part of the thing in California to move all of those underground?
No,
Oh, I thought there
it's
was.
PG&E is doing that, and only PG&E.
Oh,
Other power companies have different solutions that are a hell of a lot cheaper. We're not gonna talk about that now.
okay, I
But
just thought,
yeah, but no, that's what we're talking about, is those power lines. We're not sure in reading the law, that's what JoJo is saying, in reading the law, it is not clear that this is really gonna speed up the connection.
They're supposed to
When
have-
in my reading of it, I didn't see any penalties. Like if you say you're going to have it hooked up in 6 months and you've gotten to month 6, I don't see anybody who's gonna come over them with a stick and say, if you don't hook it up this next month, we're gonna fine you X amount of dollars. That was my reading of the bill, and I don't know if I'm right. Jojo, do you want to comment anymore?
No,
Is
I wanna go.
that the last one?
8:43. This has been an hour and 45 minutes.
Okay. So that is the last item on the list. I will develop into a ballot and we'll vote online.
Is it still
And-
possible to add one more item? I didn't know these were being, I guess you have to be on the committee to know, but, and
No,
so,
you've been getting emails that said, here's how you submit a new item.
oh, I have been?
Yes, you have been.
Well,
You just
busy,
haven't been reading them.
It's
busy
been-
month. So
have a
it's
little
too
late.
late to do that, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it is?
And I don't think we're gonna, but the list is already, I think we've got 8 items here, or 5 items, something like that. It's a pretty long list for a discussion with an assembly person. Or so I don't know, I mean, we could add one, I suppose, in theory, but I don't know if we'd ever get to it in a conversation.
What is it?
But we'll talk about that offline. Here's what we didn't talk about today. We didn't talk about COP28. There were some really extraordinary announcements that really have a big impact on us. You should have received almost all of these, both announcements and what happened at COP28 in the emails coming from the ECE, because I posted them. I thought maybe you would want to talk about some of them. We're not gonna have time.
I mentioned some exciting things going on public lands, public federal lands these days in California.
Before you do, let me just, in case somebody wants to leave. Our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for January 24th. So I want to let everybody know about that. Okay, now Bruce, go ahead. And anybody who wants to leave can go. We're done. We've overstayed our welcome.
So from south to north, oh, anyway. I know a guy with the California Wilderness Coalition, now Cal Wild, who's worked on some of these public land protection measures for over a dozen years. And there was a package of 4 that Padilla had put together after his brothers put together. And however, Schiff's bill was in there, and because Republicans don't like Schiff, they figure it easier to take that bill out so that the Republicans don't gang up against the bill. So anyway, there's let's see, there's the Huffman bill from the North Coast, the Carbajal bill from the Central Coast, and then the Judy Chu bill, which should expand the for better protections or protect the western end of Angeles National Forest. Anyway, so Padilla's now, and Manchin, there's supposed to be hearings on that bill 2 Octobers ago, but Manchin's committee has been holding it up, and now finally they're beginning to move. So we got to support Padilla's package of 3 bills. And then there's a bunch of new proposals. There's the proposed Chuckwalla National Monument in Southeast California, which has easily the largest concentration of indigenous people in California. And Representative Raul Ruiz is a strong advocate of that and is urging Biden to sign to establish the Chuckwalla National Monument south of Joshua Tree and in that general area. And then there's also a proposed expansion of we want Biden to sign to expand the San Gabriel Mountains National Monument to include some other areas, including and also more recreation area by the San Gabriel River. Then there's the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument, which is especially important for rare pollinators. And that also includes the Condor Ridge area, the second best bald eagle habitat in the state overlooking Cache Creek. So we want Biden to expand the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument right at the spine of California there. And then the latest I heard about, and perhaps the most exciting, the Satitla area, the Medicine Lake Highlands, 30 miles east of Shasta. I've commented on them a few times over the years. I was wondering why this alert didn't mention a national forest, and I read it because it's partly in Klamath National Forest, partly Shasta Trinity National Forest, and partly Modoc National Forest in both Modoc and Siskiyou counties. So thus it's really important. And by the way, it has the largest spring system in the state of California. So we've got and and the Pitt River Indians are taking the lead on on trying to get a national monument for the Medicine Lake Highlands, which would be 200,000 acres. That would be the best insurance for the water feature of California. That area the spring area has thousands of times the amount of water of all surface reservoirs in California. So anyway, all those are actually, finally, there's some clarity and there's actually some momentum behind some, of course, the Republicans still have. Oh, anyway, so Biden can do a lot himself through the Antiquities Act of 1906. And I'll be writing this up and more coherently summarizing that soon. So I've been involved some with the California 30 by 30 process. Want to protect 30% of the land, 30% of the waters by 2030. Have a chance of making it much longer. And Newsom's guy, Wade Crowfoot, by the way, he's a big champion of Satikla, the Medicine Lake Highlands National Monument. However, Newsom's guy is on the state level, not the federal level, so easy for him to, and I'm glad he's supporting that designation for east of Shasta. However, the low pickings regarding California 30 by 30 to improve protections on state land is to deal with a Jackson demonstration state forest, 48,000 acres of Mendocino County. That's what the Newsom administration should. Anyway, so easy to clean up their act on that forest. However, too much timber and whatever other interest. So also this Sites Dam, which Newsom is trying to bypass CEQA to get approved. George Skelton wrote for the LA Times that they just divert water from the Sacramento River to hold it for later in the year and then send it down. However, that's not the case. They want to rip off water from the Trinity watershed and pump it over the hills to the Sacramento River watershed for corporate agribiz. And also the Trinity watershed, the lower Trinity is where they move a lot of the natives in Northwest California. They wanted to concentrate them on the Hoopa Indian Reservation. And also that's the salmon, anadromous salmon based indigenous communities for time immemorial. So anyway, the site trying to get around CEQA to rip off water from the indigenous people and the salmon of the Trinity to send it over to Sacramento River is bad news. Sites Dam should be defeated.
Yeah, we're gonna cut you off because we're cleaning up. So I'm gonna shut the meeting down. And put away my computer and turn off the audio. And hey, I'll see you next month. I hope you'll.
Mark, please send us a good link to the agenda for tonight, as well as that other form you just showed, because that link to the agenda didn't work for any of us.
The agenda didn't work?
Yeah, well, several people said they had the same problem.
How weird.
It just didn't open it. I mean, it said not here. or something.
I'll talk to you off. Are you gonna be around tomorrow?
Okay, bye.
Give you a call. I'll give you a call in the morning. I want to clean up.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Barbara.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the meeting. Thanks. It was very informative.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.